You're tuned into the Growth Ceilings podcast, the show for builders, dreamers, and leaders ready to break limits and grow beyond what they thought possible.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Growth Ceilings podcast. My name is Jim Lovelady. I'm a professional EOS implementer. EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Today, I'm talking with Dr. Shawn Dill. Shawn started in chiropractic care, launched a clinic in Costa Rica, helped shape national standards there. Then he came back to the States and built the specific chiropractic centers across the country. Now he's the CEO of Book Yourself Solid and co-founder of the Adaptable Entrepreneur, where he helps service-based entrepreneurs become the obvious choice in their space and build businesses that run on systems instead of personal hustle. What I think every entrepreneur can benefit from, Dr. Dill, is that he helps mission-driven entrepreneurs shift from being the product to running a business that thrives independently of them. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Super excited for our conversation.
Fantastic. Let's get started by understanding what brought you to this point. Give us kind of a quick oversight and background.
Got us to this point. What's interesting is, I guess if I was in any other industry, especially sports, I would be fired by now. I would have probably a 2-14 record. And so I think what gets us to this point is the wins have been substantial and the losses have been lessons.
Outstanding way to frame that. So how did your early career in Costa Rica shape your approach to business and leadership?
Well, I think first and foremost, I mean, when I keep it as brief as possible, but when I moved to Costa Rica, I didn't speak Spanish. Was born and raised in the United States, a brief stint. My father was in the military, so we moved a lot. We also lived overseas for a little bit, but I was always in an American school. And listen, sometimes you have that American culture, right? Where it's like everybody speaks English. And I went to Costa Rica. I'm just thinking like, I'll get by, but no, that just absolutely did not work. My first year in practice was an utter disaster. I mean, absolutely just terrible. I was more than dead broke after my first year, one of those and other amazing losses. And I had to make a decision. Like I could go back to the United States. The reason why I left the United States was I didn't want to practice in the advent of managed care insurance. And so I decided, no, I'm going to stick it out. So I learned a lot about perseverance, but I also learned that I think that through life, and it's very difficult to shake for a lot of us, is that a lot of times we feel like those losses are devastating, that we feel like everybody's watching, everybody's judging. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, was to take things lightly, because at the moment, who would have thought that I'd be able to come on this podcast with you and laugh about it, because it wasn't very funny at the time, but now it kind of is.
Not to inject more sports analogies, but what I'm hearing you say is you got to get up quickly and dust yourself off.
And yeah, and not take it so seriously. Listen, if you lose a game, it's not the end of the season. I mean, unless it's game 7, and if you lose a game, it's not the end of the season. And so I think that, as an entrepreneur, we all take our lumps, but I think that oftentimes we prioritize those lumps so huge that we're like, it's the end of the world. We don't realize that, look, in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, you're going to be like, that wasn't even anything.
About becoming preeminent. What does preeminence look like for a service entrepreneur, and how can someone measure it?
Full credit to my longtime mentor, Jay Abraham, for instilling that term. Preeminence means that you are your community's most trusted advisor. And I think that that's something that's super important, because we hear so much about, ideal client, target market, niche, and it's very easy for us to kind of drill down and be about one thing. But preeminence means that you can give somebody a recommendation for a pizza place and they would respect that. But at the same time, you might be recommending a vacation spot. And at the same time, you might give them a recommendation to get rid of migraines. And when you have the authority that exceeds just one category, so you have multiple category authority, that's when you're trending towards preeminence.
So let's talk about where entrepreneurs get stuck, what are the most common growth ceilings you see, whether it's pricing, lead flow, mindset, or structure?
Yes. In working, and so my answer to that was yes, all of the above. I I always, we have several cliche things like what got you here won't get you there, right? But I love Patrick Bet David's concept when talking about goals of using the concept of doubles. So a lot of entrepreneurs sort of first glass ceiling is $1 million, a 7-figure year in revenue. But after you do the $1 million, your next launch point is going to be 2 million. And once you've clipped off 2 million, it's going to be 4. And it's never done in the man-made construct of time. So it's always, I want to, my first goal would be, I want to do $1 million as fast as I can. But once I've made $1 million, I want to do $2 million as fast as I can. But here's the interesting thing is that I think that, and this is what typically happens, Jim, is that I'll do 1 million and then I'll ask that person, okay, so now what's your goal? And they say something random, like 1.2 million. And I said, well, how'd you come up with the 1.2? And they're like, I don't know, like 20% increase. I was like, well, why 20%? And we don't know. We're like arbitrarily making this up. And I think that what happens is we think like, okay, so I know what it took to make the million. And so if I could like somehow squeeze out another 20%, I could make 1.2. That's the ceiling. Because what I like to do with my clients is that when we get to 1 million, or actually before we get to 1 million, I need to begin to understand that I'm basically going to have to retool this business to do 2 million, because I haven't seen anybody that has done their first million legitimately. And they're like, yeah, I was only working like 10%. Like it took everything they had to get to the million. So we can't do everything they had and more to 2, maybe to 1.2, but now we're going to strain relationships, etc. So it's retooling the marketing. It's retooling the sales. It's retooling the mindset and the financial strategies, because the marketing, sales, mindset, and financial strategies at 1 million are different when we try to go for 2, 4, or 8 million.
In EOS, we talk about a tool called the accountability chart, and it's really mapping the structure, mapping the seats. They're going to get you from that 1 million to the desired amount. So if you want to go from 1 to even 5 million, what does that structure look like? What's the definition of roles and responsibilities? What are the metrics and contributions for each one of those seats? And what are you willing to pay for that? And having a plan to get you there. I think what you're sharing, at least from what I see in my own experience as a coach, I see a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't plan that structure. They just kind of work their way to it. And like you talked about, they work harder, work more, work in chaos. They may get there, but oftentimes it's frustrating. They hit a ceiling, like you say, and things don't feel like they're working out.
I love that analogy, because if I have this mapped out, I'll tell you another thing that happens is, let's say that I hire you in sort of an operations role, and you're with me. You're integral to getting me to 1 million. And I'm like, I'd love Jim. He's my guy. I owe so much to him to getting my business to 1 million. But then when I look at it, I'm like, Jim's not the guy to take us to 2 million. But then I get stuck because I love Jim. And now I'm operating a family, not a business. And that's something that, I think that I love that idea, because if I had a plan, I might realize that there's a lifespan on some of these seats, and I'm going to fill a few of these seats to 1 million, but I might need to retool some of those seats to go to 2, because everybody in the 9 to 5 corporate world, they get promoted to their highest level of incompetence. Most entrepreneurs don't actually know that. And so that's what creates that dilemma, and I think creates that ceiling for us.
You said something really interesting. I like to talk about the 6 components of a business. This is the EOS model. So you see at the top is defining the vision, but to the left, this component right here, people, getting the right people into the right seats. And you kind of gave a really good example where you own the company, you hired me early on, we get to our desired million, but now we're going to scale the business. And you say to yourself, well, I love Jim, but he's not going to take us to that level. And it's really having an open, honest conversation with you, Jim, and the rest of the leadership team. What's it going to take to get to that next level? Oftentimes I'm retained, or using me as the example, Jim is retained despite the need for the business to grow, despite the need for the business to perhaps find the right people. And so we always come up to this dilemma when we're mapping out account structures and looking at or accountability charts and looking at that structure that's going to get us to where we desire to go. Mapping your vision, having a 10-year vision, a 3-year picture, a 1-year plan. Those are really key elements. And I hear you talking all along that. And I think you and I have a lot of guidance here that we both offer. It's really good. So let's move over to thinking about systems that create freedom. And I really tapped into what I read about you and understood. And a lot of this came from your LinkedIn profile. But what are the first few systems every service entrepreneur must build before scaling? I don't mean to put you on the spot either, but
No, no, the reason why I laugh is, well, let me first of all start for all listeners of the podcast and for people that are working already with Jim and tuning in and liking the podcast. Let me tell you this, that all great coaching advice is counterintuitive. Wherever you are in your business career, wherever you are in your entrepreneurial career, your intuition has brought you there. And so anybody who's like, well, I'm tuning in because I want more, I desire more, I want to grow, whatever. Well, then you have to say, my intuition brought me here. So anything that's going to get me there is going to be counterintuitive. And so I think that's super important, because it's actually, when you listen to this episode and further episodes of the podcast, it's everything that you hear that you're like, wow, that's kind of crazy, or that would never work in my industry, or that would never work in my town, city, area. That's the good stuff, because your intuition is telling you, oh, that's not the good stuff. But your intuition has gotten you to 1 million, but not to 2 million, or whatever the case may be. I personally think for entrepreneurs, specifically for entrepreneurs, and I work mostly with service-based providers, and what they do is they want to have like a front desk person. It's like sort of this badge of honor, courage. I always tell everybody, I think the very first hire that you need is to hire an executive assistant. I always ask 2 questions. Number 1, who's number 2 in charge, which goes back to right people, right seats. And in many cases, it could be like me, right? Maybe a solopreneur. But number 2 is, who runs you? So if you are number 2, if you're in 1 and 2, well, who's running you? I tell you, so many entrepreneurs early on, when you talk about initial systems, struggle because they can't balance all of the things that they feel like they need to prioritize and do. And the reason why they can't do that is because they're ineffective and inefficient. They don't know how to be stewards and students of their calendar. And they waste time because they go to the airport and they don't know their confirmation number, or they have an appointment where they go on to a podcast interview and they don't have the right link. And so then that costs everybody time. And slowly these time leaks. Thankfully, in your life and my life, we can afford that at this moment. But if we are just getting started, we can't continually have 5 and 10-minute time leaks repeatedly through the day. This
Right.
becomes extremely costly. And for me, that's why having someone that manages me and keeps me on task so that I maintain my focus in truly revenue generating activities I get paid for, and minimizes my time in activities I do not get paid for, actually has the biggest upside for me. So that would be in the realm of a hire, and it would be a system and process, because you need to standardize the way that you're managing calendar, the way that you're managing tasks, and the way that you're communicating.
Outstanding. So let's talk a little bit. We'll shift a little bit over to book yourself solid. So what's misunderstood about getting booked solid here in 2025?
That it's going to cost a lot of money. I think that, we live in a world where there's a lot of marketing. You go into social media and there, people are marketing courses and platforms and funnels and shopping carts. I mean, it's just everywhere. And I think that a lot of people even tell me, like, I just don't have enough capital. I don't have the resources, especially if we're talking about getting booked solid. I don't have the capital to do that. But listen, in today's world, there's so much that's free. You have so much, I mean, and not free, but you have so much utility, even just on your phone. If you have your phone, we can launch a podcast. We can do social media content. I mean, and social media is free. We don't have to, in today's world right now that we're recording this, there's a premium placed on organic content over paid traffic. There's so many things that you could do. So in the initial stages, and that's why I love Book Yourself Solid so much, is that it's really a lot about what you have inside of you. We live in a world today in 2025 going into 2026 where the electronic age has really leveled the playing field. Your Facebook is the same Facebook that Coca-Cola is trying to use to advertise. Your access to ChatGPT is the same access that Coca-Cola has. It's not like you can't buy a Super Bowl commercial, because I agree, you can't. But you can go on the same platform. You can go on to X. It's the same platform that they're using. The playing field has been leveled, so it's not a capital consideration. It's a knowledge and a hustle consideration. And here's the good news. This podcast is proof that one smart person can teach another smart person how to do anything. So if you're a loyal listener and you keep listening, you're going to learn a lot of things. Jim is transferring knowledge to you as well as his guests, and then you actually just have to apply it. And if you do it, you can get book solid.
When did you start Book Yourself Solid?
Well, no, well, I didn't start it, first of all. Michael Port is the author of the book, and gosh, that was so many years ago. It was actually, Michael was my very first coach ever in business. And I had a run where and so for full disclosure, I'm no longer with Book Yourself Solid, but I love that particular company, bookyourselfsolid.com. And it's a useful tool for any entrepreneur who's looking to launch their service-based business. It's been around, tried and true methodology. I mean, stood the test of time. I think that speaks a lot for the program.
Is it industry agnostic or is it specific to the
Industry agnostic, but very specifically for service providers.
So how can entrepreneurs go about attracting the right clients instead of finding more clients?
Well, I think first of all, knowing what they're looking for. Listen, I think a lot of emphasis gets placed on this ideal client, target market, avatar, but I think very few people actually understand it. And if we look at it from a personal view, I mean, if you were in the dating pool, you would want to begin with some sort of a list. A lot of people have this sort of their tall order, the list of the things that you're looking for. Now, you're not necessarily going to go out and meet somebody that ticks every single box, but at least that's a starting point. That would be your ideal client. Listen, we all do our best work with certain people, and there's other people that frankly we don't work well with. But a lot of people don't want to take the time to think about that because they just went to a course and they defined an avatar and they used weird things like the court jester or the king versus saying, listen, I work really well with people who are on time. I work really well. Maybe you work well with people that have conservative values, or maybe it's liberal values, or maybe you work really well with people that love heavy metal music. But have you actually ever thought about these are the people? And it's easy because when you're working with those people, you lose track of time and space. Time flies by. You're like, I can't believe I get paid to do this. But we never stop and say, well, wait a minute, what is it about Jim that makes that happen to me? Because I have other clients that time just drags on. So what is it about Jim? And once I identify that, don't I just want to surround myself with a bunch of Jims that I love working with? Target market then is, once I've defined ideal client, target market is where I find those kinds of people. So if I'm like, I love people that love the Las Vegas Raiders and heavy metal music, I shouldn't be running Facebook ads in Miami. And that's a trap that a lot of people fall into, is now I identify who I like, I identify where they are, and then I begin to market. The last thing there is marketing doesn't get you new clients. Marketing creates awareness, and it creates awareness of who you are and what you have to offer the world to that target market. So once they become aware, then you can begin to make sales offers into that population. Look, it's the same way that dating works. It's the exact same way. We kind of define who we want. We figure out where they hang out. We then create awareness that I'm single, you're single. And then we can make offers like, would you like to grab coffee? We don't make offers like, would you like to go to Paris on Friday? And if we can get that right, then actually booking the business becomes actually quite easy.
Really interesting what you just shared. I'm relating in my mind to even how you go about finding the right people to join your team as a leader, as a entrepreneur. How do you use core values as a way to measure behavior, prior behavior, as a predictor of how this person is going to assimilate within your desired culture? If you got an existing team, I know I've been part of dysfunctional teams in the past. I get hired, I come in with my set of my experiences and what I did before, and then you put me next to Bob, who's got similar experiences from somewhere else and what he's done in the past. And then you got Mary over here who thinks, well, her way of doing things is the best way. And then you throw us all into a room. And now as an entrepreneur, things get off track because you thought you hired the right people. You like all of us, but for some reason we're not on the same page. And this is what I find frequently, especially here in Southwest Florida, in the service capital of the world, with all the smaller size businesses that really lack a structure and a strategy for who they're going to find that right person for the right seats. And so when you're talking about customers, in my mind, I was going back to the employees and thinking about, boy, does it really start with the employees and getting that right before, the focus is now on finding the right customers. And, to your point, instead of finding more clients, which always seems like let's run out and get more versus getting it really defined and laser focused on what's the right client for your business. Hope that made sense.
First of all, before I talk about that, where in Southwest Florida are you?
I'm here just north of Naples. I'm in Estero.
Okay, I'm in Naples, just south
Right.
of you. Oh,
Right.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I want to share one mantra, and it depends. Obviously, if we were doing architecture, if we were building bridges, I'd need an engineer. But generally, what I say to entrepreneurs: hire people, not roles. Hire people, not roles. Almost everything in the entrepreneurial space can be learned on YouTube. Again, because we're not, if you need a doctor, hire skilled, licensed professionals, lawyers, accountants. But generally, what we're hiring here is people. And I think to your point, Jim, I think that same thing. You have to define your culture first, and you have to understand what the culture is. Be very
Yes.
careful that we don't get cliche because we just stay in the values. I see a lot of people that are like, well, our company values are loyalty, honesty, and trust. I was like, no, duh. Like, what company values the opposite of those? I mean, really drilling down to understand what the culture looks like here. And then I just want to go out and find people that would be great fits in the culture, even if they're not great at Excel. Maybe Jim was better at Excel than Joe, but I picked because Joe would be a better fit here. And I bet he can learn Excel because it's not rocket science with what we're doing. And so I think I really prioritize people over roles. I think far too often, and think about it, every employment ad, at the top, it says the role we're looking for. And then it says the role. I am looking for people. And I think that that's super important when making those decisions, because like you said, then that transfers over onto your clients.
I think that awareness you just talked about, what you just described, having that awareness will help you be successful. Not having that awareness, and when things do come up where you hired me for a sales leadership role and we're not hitting our numbers. And if I came out of a finance background, but you liked me and I fit the culture, but I'm in the wrong seat because perhaps I was not given the right tool. It wasn't clear to me what my role was, as you described. This is part of that accountability chart that we teach with EOS to get that crystal clear so that when you interview me, when you onboard me, it's crystal clear for what the exact expectations are. And then if there is any issue with, hey, what resource is going to help me get there? What are these expectations by some quantification of output? When are these due? What are the requirements? And then being able to effectively create visibility and traction so you can predict what's going to happen with your business versus reacting to it. I come from environments where you get done with a quarter and everyone's scratching their head. Hey, what happened during the quarter? We missed our number. And everybody goes like this, right? And there's lack of understanding of what the commitment, what the accountability is to the team, what your contribution means. We should be tracking that on a regular basis to understand, are we on track, off track? And if we're off track, quickly and decisively identify that as an issue, discuss it, and solve it in a way that makes it go away. And I think you find, well, at least with EOS, I have found having a business operating system is quite effective and leads to an outcome like booking yourself solid. When you've got a sound system, then you can ascend and scale and book yourself solid, using your words.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about adaptability. So, from your perspective, what separates entrepreneurs who adapt to change from those who stall out?
The concept's very simple. I do a lot of work in healthcare. I am a chiropractor by profession, founded and operate a chiropractic franchise, subsequently got involved in the functional medicine side of things. Am CEO of a new company called Infused that we're currently scaling, which we've also created the franchise concept for that, sitting at currently 9 units in our first year. And so we're very excited about our growth. And the concept that I believe in health is that all health really depends on your body's ability to adapt to its environment, either internal or external. In fact, I would challenge you to throw out any disease process. Every single disease process known to man can be reasoned out through an understanding of it's happening because your body is failing to adapt to its environment, either internal or external. But I also believe that same thing for businesses. All businesses, the success of the business depends entirely on the ability of that business to adapt to its environment, either internal or external. We've already talked about your employees and your prospects and your clients, and can you adapt to their changing needs and desires? But what about external needs like AI and SEO and social media and algorithm changes? And so the whole thing is, if you understood that, rather than trying to chase that next shiny bullet, you would begin to say, listen, the key to success is to make my business as adaptable to its environment as possible. And as long as we're constantly adaptable to our environment, internal or external, we'll be fine.
So, what lessons from scaling a chiropractic brand apply to consultants or solopreneurs?
Well, I think, and that's a very difficult thing, right? Because it's the transition for me. And when you talk about scaling a service brand, it's the transition from getting paid for what you do to getting paid for what you know. One of my mentors, Mark Murphy, has been instrumental in helping me to understand, teach, and articulate that concept. But moving from getting paid for what you do to getting paid for what you know, that particularly applies in the coaching and consulting space, because we initially go out and we're hustling for clients. But then, it's very difficult because very few consultants manage to jump into scale where you have other people who are not now sharing your concepts, sharing your IP, applying it. EOS is a great example of that, where that is now scalable. And then you have individuals who jump in, and then hopefully those individuals, maybe they came in as intrapreneurs, so they were looking to mitigate the risk a little bit with a tried and true system, but then maybe some of them develop into entrepreneurs. And then from there, that's when you have to enter into, okay, like, what are my opportunities to scale with a proprietary system, et cetera. But yeah, I think that, in the healthcare space, you go to a certain dentist because you like that dentist, or you go to a
Right.
chiropractor because you like that chiropractor. Transcending that in scale, it requires a lot of systems, processes, and category authority.
So, let's think about our listeners for a moment, primarily business owners, founders, entrepreneurs. What can that group do this week to shift from technician to C?
Create one really clear system or process. There's, here's a couple things, is that, the mark of a truly intelligent individual is the ability to maintain two seemingly opposing ideas simultaneously in one's mind. And so on one side, I would say there's no one right way to do anything. I mean, you watch the Food Network, there's no one right way to chop an onion. There's a lot of ways to do it. But at the same time, in your business, to the listener, in your business, there has to be a right way to do everything. So if we are going to make one move into scaling, one, I would adopt that mindset. But two, then I would systematize the very first thing. Or there has to be a right way to do everything. Once you've done the one, then you do the second and the third, and now you're on your way to scale.
So, we're nearing our close, but I got a couple more questions for you. What are you most excited about right now?
Man, I'm really excited about watching the world's ability or inability to adapt to AI. So much discussion on it. To me, I kind of steer away, in public forums about, engaging in topics. I'm not holding myself out as an expert. I don't know who could be an expert, maybe Sam Altman, but it's just going to be interesting how we adapt. And we're already even seeing, for example, OpenAI adapt, and the throttling of certain information, not censorship, but They recently took away the ability for ChatGPT to diagnose, to play the role of a medical doctor, and also to play the role of a lawyer, which is interesting because it means a lot of people were using it for that. And I think that they were like, yeah, this is creating some sort of a liability potentially legally when we're providing legal advice or medical advice. It'll be interesting to see as this develops what we utilize. I know a lot of people have a lot of fear around it. So it's just going to be interesting to see kind of what shakes through at the end.
I am guilty as charged a little over a year ago, diving into AI. And I was introduced to ChatGPT back in 2023 early on, and I use it somewhat limited. But then last year, I really caught fire with it. And just based on my own curiosity, my own mortality, I said, hey, I'm going to be X number of years old. I'm 62 now. How long do I have to live? And I uploaded my medical, all my health records, everything, and it gave me a pretty good outcome. So I don't know if that was by design because the system was designed to give me something positive, but I've kind of course corrected along the way, have made the custom adjustments within GPT to get a more straightforward response, but it's still consistently telling me the same thing. So it's interesting to note that you said they've taken that out and are no longer doing that. I'm going to go double check that as soon as we get off this call, see how long I'm going to live.
Visit us at Well Infused. We'll get you get you living forever.
That's great. That's great. One more question. What belief have you completely changed your mind about since starting your career?
A million. And this is one of the things too. I mean, I would literally answer that with everything. But here's what I would say about that question. I think that so many people are afraid to change their minds, again, because they think that they'll be frowned upon. And people will say like, hey, listen, I went back in the, social media and found an example of you saying that, you should start with a no barrier to entry offer and then have low barrier and a mid barrier and then work them up. I personally feel today it works the opposite. I'm going to come in with my high ticket offer and then I'm going to downsell based on your ability to engage with me versus put you on a process, because somebody that wants the thing, we live in a fast paced world. They don't want to come in at the free guide and then move to the thing because they're trying to get the $20,000 thing. They don't have time to be moved through that whole funnel system. So yeah, you should be able to find every instance in the world of me contradicting myself. And that's a badge of adaptation. What I thought last year, I don't think today. And that's because I'm constantly challenging myself to change my mind about everything.
Dr. Shawn Dill, this has been a fantastic conversation. Your perspective on helping entrepreneurs shift from being the product to building businesses that truly serve them is something every listener can apply. For anyone who wants to learn more, follow your work, or connect with you directly, what's the best way to do that?
Every social media channel is at Dr. Shawn, SHAWN, Dill, DILL. Website is adaptapreneur.com.
So I want to say thank you again for being part of the show and sharing so much value today. I really appreciate your time and the insight that you brought to the conversation. And to everyone who's listening, remember, success isn't about doing more. It's about building the systems and the mindset that allow your business to grow without depending on you. Thanks for tuning in to the Growth Ceilings podcast. We'll see you next time.
You've been watching the Growth Ceilings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's ready to grow.